Howdy, virtual universe. It's Zach, and welcome to my poetry blog. I just got back from the AIDS Memorial Quilt, and the first time I came to San Francisco, I was like 20 years old, and the former Tower Records was empty except for a display of the panels of the quilt, and where Under One Roof is using as storage now was like a sewing studio, and people were coming in and actively participating and creating panels for the quilt. And flash forward, 14 years, and it's being brought back, and it was out and laid out on display, and I went to go meet Bob there, and holy fucking shit, is it still so intense to be in a room with those quilt panels. And it's so incredible. You're just like in there, like looking at these giant panels, each one the size of a casket, representing all the people who died from AIDS and the government mishandling of HIV medicines. And I sort of hadn't anticipated how intense it was going to be to go from seeing these quilt panels, which I sort of had like a flippant tourist attitude of like, I'm just going to see it, it's important because it's cultural and it's Sunday, to being like, oh right, will to live, will to live, will to live, will to live. Especially because the topic I was going to talk about for this blog was suicide. It was not an especially good week in our little radical queer community. We had 2 suicides of 2 different people in 2 different places. And this has just been a bad year. Last summer, one of the most visionary and brilliant people I've ever known killed himself, and 8 months on, he's still fucked up over it and still going through it. And I've watched 2 very close friends of mine also lose people they were inspired by to suicide, and watching them just go through it and seeing how grief takes so long to get out of your body, and we experience it like a physical trauma that has to be actually nursed and medicated and worked through. And so spent a lot of time this week thinking about suicide and what are we supposed to be doing as a community to encourage this. And I've had a very snarky kind of attitude towards the It Gets Better videos, and I've really hated on It Gets Better, and had this sort of like, well, actually it straight up doesn't get better, and a lot of us just live tormented, and a lot of us just live tortured, and a lot of us think it's better for years and years and years, and then sometimes around the age of 47 kill themselves randomly. And the sub-theme of my blog, I don't know what to do, but I do know that we have to come up with some sort of cultural safety net, and that we do need to start engaging in a very real discussion around like how can we improve the mental health generically and generally of our community, and can we employ new techniques and new ideas around our self-esteem to this, so that we're not even caught up in the normative psychology that can also be destructive, is that can't you always follow the proper avenues. So suicide has been this theme in my life. My mom was really into suicide, and I feel like I spent more of my teenage years thinking about it and experiencing the ramifications of suicide attempts than was fair or necessary. And also, in a lot of ways, it makes me a shaman around the topic, and people come to me to talk about how they feel when someone they love does it. And so I've been prescribing Sylvia Plath for years, and I've been really into Sylvia Plath. And I was going to read a Sylvia Plath poem, but I couldn't find any of them. But then I found this poem that her daughter wrote, and her daughter wrote it in 2003, and it's short, and it basically just says, and now they want to make a film for anyone who doesn't have the ability to imagine a body, head in the oven, the children orphaned. Oh, and they would like me to sell her words, so they can feed the giant monster their sacred Sylvia suicide doll. And, yeah, suicide. I don't know what we're supposed to do about it. I really wish it was not this major theme. I did like a historical search today to try and figure out like what are the roots of suicide, and apparently lots of cultures pre-Christianity had a very like laissez-faire idea about suicide, as they didn't see it as any big deal. It was just like another honorable choice, and that the Greeks even had a system for applying for suicide where you could, basically petition the law of the land, as in, these are the following reasons I don't feel my life is worth living, and it should you should they deem that you had like a legitimate reason, they would actually give you a hemlock. It was like you can actually purchase your weapon from the state. And Aristotle said that suicide was only a crime because it was depriving your community of your gifts. And I live in a community that is continually deprived of a lot of really ingenious people's gifts. And somehow all of my weeks thinking around suicide and 40 minutes looking at the AIDS quilt sort of collided psychologically for me. And I feel this incredible pull towards like, okay, well, how do we support life? How do we create more life? How am I supposed to be a cauldron for the effervescence that is like joie de vivre? My drag middle name is Ennui, and I frequently am so jaded and so addicted to my own sort of over it feeling that it's kind of fascinating to be sitting here at my blog and be like, oh my God, you are experiencing joie de vivre. You or I have some addiction to life, as Tony Kushner puts it, that long before life is unlivable, life becomes unbearable, and that is when the real rebellion begins. I don't know, quote shaky, but somewhere along like that. And every day I look around the world and it feels a little bit more unbearable, and somehow we have to find the strength to live. I think the last little bablet I'll give is Albert Camus. In the dark of winter, I found the fiercest spring existed only in my heart. So, it's the middle of winter. It was the bone moon this week. It's actually cold. It's actually dark. Blessings to everyone. I hope the spring is gorgeous.